He promised he'd only be gone for 20 minutes. "Just a quick errand," he said with that same half-smile he used every time he lied. I watched him grab his keys and kiss me on the cheek, like he always did, with robotic affection. But something about this night was different. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact or how his phone buzzed 3 times in a row before he silenced it, face down. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, smiled, and waited for the door to close behind him. Then I followed. For weeks, I had been playing the fool. The late-night meetings that never made sense, the sudden interest in his appearance after 10 years, of marriage, the passwords on everything, it all added up. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was the stress of work or a midlife crisis. But you don't accidentally smile at your phone at midnight when your wife is asleep in the next room. You don't whisper in the bathroom when you think the shower is running. I wasn't paranoid. I was waking up. I didn't have a grand plan that night. I didn't even know what I'd do if I caught him. All I knew was that I needed the truth. Not just a gut feeling, not more empty justifications. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I grabbed my coat, slipped on my sneakers, and quietly backed my car out of the driveway a minute after he left. It didn't take long. He didn't even bother hiding it well. He drove across town, parked in front of a modest little townhouse, and practically skipped up the steps like a giddy teenager. I parked half a block down, turned off the engine, and watched him ring the bell. She opened the door in seconds. Young, blonde, too perfect in that plastic way. They kissed like no one could see them. But I saw everything. In that moment, something broke inside me, not just my heart, but something deeper. The kind of break that doesn't hurt right away because it cuts through your soul before your mind can even register the pain. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just sat there, cold and still, watching the man I had built a life with wrap his arms around someone else like our 10 years meant nothing. Like our marriage, our shared mortgage, our quiet plans for retirement. None of it had ever existed. He had told me he loved me that morning. He had looked me in the eyes, touched my hand and said, "You're my world." And now, just 12 hours later, he was smiling into another woman's neck like I was a distant memory. I didn't confront him that night. I went home, parked in the same spot he had left from, and climbed into bed like nothing happened. He returned an hour later, smelling faintly of vanilla perfume. I pretended to be asleep. I felt the bed dip as he lay beside me, felt the warmth of his body next to mine, and forced myself to breathe evenly. That night, I decided something. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg or scream or let him gaslight me into believing. I had imagined it all. I was going to destroy the fantasy he had built, brick by brick. He thought he had me fooled. He thought he could keep both lives, me, the loyal wife, and her, the exciting escape. But what he didn't know was that I was done being part of his charade. He had started a game, but I was going to finish it. The next morning, he made us coffee like he always did, mine in the blue mug with almond milk, his black with 2 sugars. He slid it across the counter and kissed me on the forehead like he hadn't just spent the night tangled up in another woman's sheets. I smiled back and took a sip. That's how betrayal begins to rot you from the inside out. Slowly, quietly, while life on the outside goes on like nothing's changed. But I had changed. Every little thing he did became evidence. I started seeing his actions with fresh eyes. His phone never left his side, not even when he showered. He used to leave it on the kitchen table for hours. Now it was practically glued to his hand. The late-night work emails? I checked. His company's email servers didn't even run after 7 p.m., and the so-called monthly networking dinners he kept attending? I called the restaurant. There hadn't been a reservation under his name for months. The more I looked, the more cracks appeared in the image he worked so hard to maintain. But what hit hardest wasn't the cheating. It was the rehearsed normalcy. The fact that he could lie so smoothly, kiss me so naturally, make love to me on Sundays and hold another woman on Thursdays. It was calculated, controlled. He was choosing to break my heart every single day and acting like he had a right to. That was when the pain turned to fury. This wasn't just a fling. This was an affair with precision. He had emotionally checked out of our marriage long ago and left me to carry the weight of pretending. He didn't just betray me, he made me complicit in his fantasy. I began noticing the things I had dismissed before, how he'd pushed me to scale back my work hours to focus on us, only to disappear on weekends. How he'd suddenly insisted on separate bank accounts for financial independence, right before he started transferring money out of our joint savings. How he'd encouraged me to decline that job offer in Chicago, saying we weren't ready for a big move, even though, apparently, he was already halfway out the door, and it wasn't just emotional damage. There were financial implications, too. Our accounts were slowly draining. He had taken out a line of credit in our names, forged my signature on a couple of home improvement documents I had never seen, and made purchases that had nothing to do with our house. I found the receipts buried in his desk drawer, a diamond necklace, 2 plane tickets to Miami, and luxury hotel bookings on dates when he claimed to be at team-building retreats. He was planning a life with her using the foundations I had helped him build. My salary had paid half the mortgage. I had supported him through 2 job changes and helped him through his burnout. I had stayed loyal, patient, and committed, even when he didn't deserve it. Now, I was watching it all unravel because he wanted excitement, something new. I felt like I was being erased from my own life. But here's what he didn't understand. When you burn someone like me, someone who loved deeply and gave everything without asking much in return, you don't just lose their love. You create something else entirely. He created a version of me that wasn't afraid to fight back, to gather every scrap of evidence, to protect what was mine and expose what was his. He thought he had me trapped, emotionally and financially, but I wasn't stuck. I was silent. And silence can be the most dangerous weapon of all. This wasn't just about a man cheating on his wife. This was about betrayal that bled into every inch of my life. Emotionally, mentally, financially, I had tethered my future to his. My dreams had shifted to accommodate his. My choices altered to support his career, his comfort, his goals. And now, when he had what he wanted, he was discarding me like an old coat. Quietly, efficiently, without so much as the dignity of honesty. But I had more than heartbreak on my hands. We had a home together, a mortgage with both our names on it, a retirement fund, investments, joint credit lines. And I started to see the trail of sabotage he was quietly laying behind me. It wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about deceit with intent. Intent to leave me with nothing. He thought he was clever. He thought if he moved slowly, small money transfers here, missing payments there, I wouldn't notice until it was too late. That when the time came, he could vanish into a new life while I was left behind trying to understand where it all went wrong. And he was almost right. Almost. I would have missed the credit card in my name if I hadn't checked the mail that day. I might not have noticed the $2,500 business expense that came from our savings account, but once I did, I couldn't unsee it. The pieces started to fall into place. This wasn't a man making a mistake. This was a man building an escape plan, and I was his collateral damage. I found the messages between them on an old tablet he forgot to log out of. Messages that confirmed everything. She called me the ghost, said he should stop pretending I mattered. He called her the upgrade, told her to be patient. He was wrapping up loose ends. That was me. I was the loose end. The woman I had loved and trusted was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could look me in the eye over dinner and talk about weekend plans, all while texting his mistress about how to hide the next. Wire transfer. Someone who could walk around our home, the one I decorated with my own hands, and look at me like a burden instead of a partner. What's worse, I had defended him. To my friends who raised red flags months ago. To my sister, who told me something felt off. I had told them to back off, that we were just going through a phase. Because I wanted so badly to believe the man I married was still in there somewhere. That maybe the late nights and the distance were stress, or aging, or boredom. Anything. But betrayal. I wasn't just mourning my marriage, I was mourning my own judgment, my trust, my ability to tell truth from lies. But I couldn't afford to dwell in pain. Because if I didn't act quickly, he was going to strip me of everything. I had worked for my savings, my security, my future. And the thing is, he thought I was too soft to fight back, that I'd break quietly, that I'd cry, maybe threaten to leave, and then forgive him like always. He didn't see the storm he was brewing. This mattered because I mattered. My time, my energy, my sacrifices. Everything I had poured into this marriage deserved justice. If he wanted to erase me, he was going to have to watch me rise instead. And I wasn't rising alone. I was bringing the truth with me. I wasn't going to be a ghost. I was going to be the reckoning. He didn't know I knew. That was my greatest advantage. There's a quiet kind of power that comes when you stop reacting and start observing. I let him continue his game, let him lie to my face, play house, and whisper secrets into a phone he thought was untraceable. But every time he slipped up, I took note. Every time he dropped a clue, I picked it up and tucked it away. I was done being the heartbroken wife. Now, I was the investigator. First, I needed to know what I was dealing with. Every lie, every withdrawal, every legal detail he had hidden in the shadows of our marriage. I opened a new email account and signed up for credit monitoring under both of our names. What I found made my skin crawl. 2 credit cards I didn't know existed, both maxed out. A pending car loan application, for her no doubt. He was preparing to co-sign. Next, I made copies of everything. Bank statements, text messages from the tablet, email threads, receipts from our shared accounts that matched his secret expenses. I took photos of his desk drawer, where he kept the documents he didn't think I'd touch. I uploaded everything to a secure drive, labeled and organized. If he ever tried to drag me through a divorce unprepared, I'd burn his narrative to the ground with facts. Then I called a lawyer. Quietly. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation. I wanted leverage. I found a family law attorney known for her no-nonsense style and her experience dealing with high-conflict spouses. She reviewed everything and told me something that made my blood turn to ice. He had started laying the groundwork for a separation without telling me. She showed me the signs. He had already consulted someone. He wasn't just cheating. He was preparing to abandon me strategically after draining our assets. He wanted to leave me with nothing, and he wanted to look clean doing it. My lawyer gave me advice I never thought I'd need. Freeze all joint accounts, open a new checking account in my name only, redirect my paychecks, and document every single communication. We began drafting a case that, if needed, would reveal just how calculated his betrayal was, financially, emotionally, and legally. But I wasn't stopping there. Revenge wasn't about screaming in his face or exposing him in public. Revenge was about holding a mirror up to his lies and letting him watch everything crumble, without me raising my voice once. I started smiling again, laughing even. I let him think I was still blind. That I was the same wife he'd trained over the years to stay quiet and make excuses for him. That gave me access. Access to more lies, more deception, more mistakes he didn't realize I was catching. Then I booked a session with a forensic accountant. I found out he had been hiding money in a digital wallet, slowly funneling small amounts from our joint investments. Illegal? Not exactly. Deceptive and ethically rotten? Absolutely. Enough to strengthen my legal standing? More than enough. Still, I didn't confront him. I was waiting for the right moment, waiting for the final piece, waiting until I could hit him, not with speculation, but with truth that would suffocate every excuse he could possibly reach for. He thought I was powerless. He thought his charm, his manipulation, his years of gaslighting had left me weak. But what he didn't realize was that his lies had built a cage around him, and I held the key. The plan wasn't just to leave him. The plan was to make sure that when I did, he'd have to sit in the wreckage of what he destroyed. To ensure that everything he thought he'd get away with, every stolen dollar, every smug smile, every whispered, "she'll never find out," would come back to haunt him. He had no idea that every time he left to be with her, I was preparing the fire that would burn his double life to the ground. The moment I decided to act, everything changed. There was no turning back, no more pretending, no more playing the role of the dutiful wife who would forgive anything. I had taken the first steps into a new world, one where I was in control, one where I didn't have to beg or plead for honesty or loyalty. I began systematically unraveling the web he'd created around me. The small signs of his deception weren't just annoying anymore. They were my ammunition. I didn't tell him a single thing, though. The moment I opened my mouth to confront him, I lost my power. I needed him to think everything was fine, so I kept up the charade, smiling through my teeth, making casual conversation, pretending nothing had changed. But behind the scenes, I was moving with purpose. First, I froze our joint accounts. I transferred my portion of the savings to a new account under my name only. I didn't want to raise suspicion, so I kept everything low-key. There were no large withdrawals, no obvious changes. It was subtle, quiet. But as soon as I saw the first withdrawal from his secret account, a car loan for a new vehicle he wasn't going to use for me, I knew it was time to take action. The lawyer I'd contacted had already begun drafting documents to protect my interests. She recommended I get access to all our financial statements and freeze his credit cards, something I did without hesitation. When he went to use his card one night and it was declined, I felt a small sense of victory. It wasn't about the money. It was about sending him the message that I was no longer the naive wife he could walk over. But it wasn't just about finances. I needed him to feel the weight of what he'd done, to feel cornered, just like I had. So, I started pulling evidence from every angle. I retrieved old emails from his work account, messages from his phone, receipts from places I knew he'd been with her. Slowly, I began piecing together the story. The dinner reservations at high-end restaurants, the weekend getaways, the secretive phone calls at odd hours. He thought deleting his browsing history and clearing his texts meant it was all gone, but I had already saved the most incriminating ones. I had them, locked and loaded, ready to be used at the right moment. I also enlisted a private investigator, a woman who specialized in infidelity cases. She followed him on several occasions, collecting photos of him and his mistress, photos that showed more than just an affair. It showed his blatant disregard for me, for our life together. It showed him crossing the line into something that was no longer just personal betrayal. It was a deliberate attempt to erase me from our shared narrative. But the hardest part wasn't the evidence. It wasn't the slow but steady process of collecting every shred of proof that would decimate his credibility in a courtroom. The hardest part was the emotional toll it took. Every time I dug through his things, every time I uncovered something new, it felt like a small wound opening again. It reminded me of the woman I used to be, the woman who believed in love, in loyalty, in the idea of a shared future. But I pushed those feelings aside, one by one. I reminded myself that I was doing this for me now, for my future. I started to get smarter. I didn't engage in any confrontational conversations. Instead, I used his own behavior against him. He began leaving the house more often, disappearing for long stretches of time. And every time he did, I was there, watching his every move. I would document his comings and goings, noting the times and locations. The more I learned about his routine, the more I realized just how far he'd gone in his deception. He was trying to have his cake and eat it too. But I was about to turn the table. I knew the key to taking him down wasn't just about confronting him with evidence. No, that would be too simple. He'd lie, deny, and manipulate his way out of it. No, the real power came from forcing him into a corner where he couldn't escape, where the truth would be undeniable. So, I made my move. I made sure to send a final message, not to him, but to his mistress. I knew she was under the false belief that he was leaving me soon, that their happy ending was just around the corner. I sent her the photos of them together. I wrote simply, "You're not the first, and you won't be the last, but you're definitely the most naive." It was subtle, it was cold, but it worked. The next time I saw him, he was different. There was a shift in his demeanor. The confident, arrogant man who had been leading a double life was unraveling, and I knew the time was coming. When the storm hit, I'd be ready. It happened on a Thursday night. He was late, which was nothing new. Another urgent work call, another meeting running late. This time, though, I wasn't waiting at home for him to walk in the door, pretending like everything was fine. I was standing in the living room, my phone in hand, scrolling through the photos and messages I had gathered over the last few weeks. The ones of him smiling with her at the beach. The ones of him picking her up at the airport. The ones he thought were private, but were now carefully stored on my secure drive, ready for the moment he thought I would be too weak to act. I knew the moment had come. He had no idea I was prepared. He thought I was still the woman who waited, who forgave, who believed his lies. But I wasn't. When he walked through the door, I didn't even flinch. I just stood there, holding the phone in my hand like a weapon. "Hey," he greeted me, casual, trying to sound normal, but his voice betrayed him. There was nervousness there, a crack in the mask he had so carefully constructed over the months. "Sit down," I said, my voice steady, calm. He frowned, but obeyed, sinking into the couch as I took a seat across from him. He was nervous now. The air felt thick with the unspoken, but I wasn't going to make it easy for him. "I need you to listen very carefully," I began. "I've known for weeks, maybe longer. I have everything. The receipts, the photos, the text messages between you and her. I know about the car loan, the secret account, the weekend trips, the business dinners. I've seen it all, and I'm not here to beg. I'm here to make sure you don't walk away from this without consequences." His face drained of color, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You don't get to explain yourself. You don't get to tell me you're sorry or that I misunderstood. You've been planning to leave me for months, haven't you? You thought you could just slip away quietly, start a new life with her without facing any repercussions. You thought I'd never know. I stood up, pacing in front of him. The power shifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't the victim. He was. And I wasn't going to let him talk his way out of this. I've got more than just your lies, I continued. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I've got every piece of evidence needed to make sure you pay for what you've done. For draining our savings, for the fraud, for everything. And if you think you're just going to walk out the door, know that I'm not the one who will be left behind. His face twisted with guilt, his eyes filled with panic. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, but the anger burned too bright for sympathy. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me. This was about reclaiming what he tried to take from me. You're not the first person I've had to deal with, I said, letting the silence sit between us. You think this is the end of the story, but it's only the beginning. I've contacted your company, your clients. I've made sure they know exactly who you are. Your lies won't stay buried forever. And when they find out what you've been doing behind closed doors, it won't just be me who you lose. He was shaking now, visibly breaking down. The man who once held all the power in our relationship was crumbling in front of me, unable to defend himself. The weight of his choices was finally too much to bear, and he had nowhere left to hide. I didn't think you'd ever do this, he stammered, his voice cracking. You thought I'd stay quiet, I interrupted, stepping closer. You thought I'd let you walk away with everything you've taken from me, but you underestimated me. I watched him struggle to regain control of himself, but it was too late. The walls he'd carefully constructed were falling apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. I let the silence stretch out, enjoying the sight of his defeat. This was the moment I had been working toward. The moment when the truth was undeniable, when karma caught up with him. He slumped, defeated. The man who had betrayed me, taken my love and trust, was now a shell of who he once was. I had exposed him for who he truly was, a liar, a cheat, and a coward. Get out, I finally said, my voice steady, final. And don't come back. You've already lost everything. He didn't argue. He just stood up, his shoulders slumped, and walked out the door without a word. I watched him leave, a strange sense of satisfaction settling over me. The world hadn't ended. My life hadn't shattered the way I thought it would. I was still standing, still here. As the door clicked shut behind him, I realized I had won. Not because I had driven him out or exposed him, but because I had taken back control. I had refused to be a victim, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my dignity, my future, and my peace. I was no longer a woman who was betrayed. I was a woman who fought back and won.